And we only knew about it publicly here. And this is the kind of thing that George Soros is famous for this, talking the sterling down. And what did he do? He stole the pensions of all the little people.
Made $1 billion.
All right. If you hold Bitcoin, I want to warn you about potential manipulation and volatility to come in 2021, because we're seeing some of the biggest globalists, institutions, known manipulators in traditional finance come into cryptocurrency. Breaking news, George Soros' investment fund is reportedly trading Bitcoin. And with this investment fund, with over $28 billion in assets under management, in today's video, let's discuss just how deep this manipulation, this Soros story goes. Welcome back everybody to Altcoin Daily, where you subscribe for a video on cryptocurrency every day. My name's Austin, and because this video specifically is information that the mainstream media will not report, any engagement, any like, any comment right now with this video would really help me, would really help get the truth, get this information out to as many people as possible. Because the truth is, George Soros's foray into cryptocurrency did not start in 2021, like the mainstream media would lead you to believe. It started way back in 2011, 2012, when Bitcoin was trading at just dollars, when InfoWars host Alex Jones controversially claims that George Soros allegedly offered him $5 million to pump Bitcoin. You see, what you have to understand about cryptocurrency, and nobody likes to talk about this, but you can manipulate the price of Bitcoin up just as much as you can manipulate the price of Bitcoin down. Both make money. It just depends where we are in the market cycle and who's pulling the strings. Watch this clip of Jones on the Joe Rogan podcast back in 2019 talking about Bitcoin.
I got offered at the time like $5 million worth of Bitcoin. I think it was like $38 million by the time it got there. I refused it. And I got told like 8 years ago, I got told by two different people, very well-known rich people. They said, George Soros likes you. He wants to work with you, and Alexander Soros and this other Soros. You just need to stop attacking him. And by the way, we want you to pump Bitcoin, which I believe in cryptocurrencies. I believe it's the future. We got a private Federal Reserve. It's all fiat. I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying be careful.
A pretty direct allegation. And to be clear, it's not damning. It's not legally binding. It's just some guy on some podcast sharing his experience with George Soros and Bitcoin. And manipulation, in general, has been going on for decades. Let's keep going and move on to our second clip, of which OG subscribers to Altcoin Daily will recognize. Glenn Beck and famed investor Tika Tiwari explain exactly how institutions manipulated you and me, the little guy, back in the dot-com bubble and the housing crisis bubble. This clip is about 3 minutes long. Pay attention. Watch this.
You explained it to me. It's really, people should go to jail, but it's not illegal.
No.
And this is really horrible. And it's why we all feel so freaked out. But they are feasting on our savings. And it's an enormous robbery. Quite honestly,
it's a huge transfer of wealth that's happening right now. The last time I saw something like this was back during 1994 to 1995. In the early to mid 90s, individuals were making just enormous amounts of money buying companies like Dell, AOL, Microsoft, Netscape, and some of these smaller internet stocks. And the institutions had completely missed that bull market. And so they were scoffing at these so-called lemmings. And so during 1994 to 1995, we had a bit of a bear market. And so, again, institutions were out saying that, oh, anybody buying internet stocks, you're idiotic. And so you had a lot of people selling their AOL, selling their Microsoft, selling their Dell shares. Guess who was buying? It was the institutions. If you look at a chart of institutional allocation to venture capital internet deals, it doubled between 1994 to 1995, which was exactly when institutions were saying, oh, this is just a market for idiots. Nobody should be buying this stuff. So they literally stole all this wealth that should have been in the hands of individuals that owned Dell, Microsoft, and AOL. And then from 1995 to 2000, of course, we saw $5 trillion come into the market, in the biggest bull market we've ever seen. So this blueprint of creating fear in order to get cheap prices is nothing new. So
hang on just a second before you go on.
Yeah.
This one is really important to me because the housing crisis, those banks, they bought up all of those houses. They were the ones who caused the problem.
Right.
Then they were talking everything down and saying, "I'm just taking the junk off the table."
Yeah.
That's not junk now.
It's not junk. When it's dropped 40 to 60%, it's not junk. So this happened between 2011, 2012. Blackstone Group buys 50,000 homes. But during this period of time, the regular individual couldn't get a mortgage, right? It was virtually impossible to get a mortgage during this time, exactly when institutions were buying. And then the dot-com crash in 03, if you can go back and look at old CNBC clips during 03, even as the market was starting to come up, oh, don't buy tech stocks. No, they're evil. Don't buy tech stocks. Don't buy tech stocks. But institutions, if you looked at the 10Ks, the Qs, and all of the filings, the quarterly filings, they were all loading up on tech.
This is how the rich get richer.
Yes.
They know, they're connected. A lot of times they're coordinating without the insider trading. This is not illegal to do.
No, manipulating the news cycle, if you're smart about it, is they can get away with it. Nobody's ever been arrested for anything like this.
So now...
Wow. Pay attention to what they do, not just what they say. This clip, very revealing. And I know what you may be thinking. Okay, Austin, what does clear manipulation during the tech.com bubble, clear manipulation during the housing crisis, what does that have to do with Bitcoin? And what does that have to do with Soros, now legally, potentially getting into Bitcoin through his investment firm? To finish this clip, the great cryptocurrency conspiracy from late 2018, we have confirmation that Jamie Dimon, George Soros, Goldman Sachs, to name a few, back in 2018, fudded Bitcoin in the press in an attempt to suppress the price so you would sell and they could buy your bags cheaper. Watch this clip, and again, point of all this is manipulation is prevalent in all markets, and pay attention to what they do, not just what they say. Watch this.
Nobody's ever been arrested for anything like this.
So now, with crypto, I know personally, I know people that would have gotten in or stayed in if these people weren't saying what they're saying.
Right, and so this has really been extremely egregious. So on September 12th, Jamie Dimon says Bitcoin is a fraud. He says he'll fire any one of his traders buying Bitcoin. Bitcoin drops 24%. When Jamie Dimon speaks,
people listen.
People listen. So that weekend, we found out that the largest buyer of a Bitcoin fund that's in Europe that buys physical Bitcoin, right? The largest buyer was Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan. And that's not illegal.
He says it's a fraud.
It says he'll fire anyone that buys it. Yes.
And at the same time, his company is buying it.
His company is buying it.
So it's just, so unethical.
Right.
Okay, George Soros.
George Soros, in January 24th, price was already down, calls Bitcoin a bubble, says Bitcoin is the worst, the worst investment in the world. Don't buy Bitcoin. Don't buy Bitcoin. Basically throws gasoline on the fire at this point. And then what do we find out? So he says bubble here.
It drops 44%.
Right. And then here in April, 2 months later, guess what we find out? His $26 billion family office has approval to buy cryptocurrency.
Right. And we only knew about it publicly here. And this is the kind of thing that George Soros is famous for this, talking the sterling down. And what did he do? He stole the pensions of all the little people.
Yeah, made $1 billion.
Yeah. Okay.
So then here now, Goldman Sachs, this, again, February 7th, most cryptocurrencies will crash to zero. Now, I remember when they said this in February, and I had, through my network, I knew that Goldman Sachs was setting up a crypto trading desk. absolutely knew they were setting up a crypto trading desk. And
I remember you telling me that.
Right. And then,
wow. Give me your thoughts down below in the video comment section. And I do think it's interesting to point out, while George Soros's family office did get approval back then to start trading cryptocurrency, to our knowledge, they never actually did. As opposed to Goldman Sachs and Jamie Dimon, they fuddled the price and then they took their positions. And that brings us to where we are today. Let me read you this article and then explain my thoughts and how this affects you and me as crypto investors. Soros Fund Management, the private investment firm of billionaire George Soros, is reportedly trading Bitcoin as part of a broader exploration of digital assets, according to financial news website The Street. So first, two things to realize is Soros himself is not putting out a press release. He's not breaking this story on his own. Financial publisher The Street has two unnamed sources both confirming that George Soros's fund management is in. And not getting in, they're saying he's been in. People familiar with the matter told author Michael Boldly that Don Fitzpatrick, the chief investment officer for Soros Fund Management, gave the green light to trade Bitcoin and possibly other cryptocurrencies in the last few weeks. And whether it's only been a few weeks or possibly a few months, that could explain the outrageous volatility and manipulation to the downside we saw with Bitcoin over these last several weeks. Speaking on condition of anonymity, the sources said Fitzpatrick and her team have been exploring cryptocurrencies for some time, and that the latest venture is more than just kicking the tires on digital assets. A spokesperson for Soros Fund Management was contacted by The Street, but declined to comment. Okay, so let's bring this home. What does this mean to you and me as a crypto investor? Well, number one, we know conjecturally that George Soros, before his fund got involved, was not above manipulating the price for his own gain, up or down. He has a history. Number two, we know that manipulation happens in all markets. The tech, dot-com bubble of the late 90s, the housing crisis of 08, and with cryptocurrency, specifically by Jamie Dimon, George Soros, and Goldman Sachs. And number three, while we now know that Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, they're in. They've been in, they've gotten in this year or the year before. George Soros's fund never officially got into Bitcoin until reportedly this year. They say that when the average retail investor misses the boat, you miss the boat. But when an institution, a large whale, misses the boat, well, they'll bring that boat right back as best they can. Do not be shaken out if volatility were to happen. We saw heavy volatility at the beginning of 2021. We're at a boring period right now. I would expect heavy volatility in possibly either direction as this market unfolds. The minute I get more information, I will make a video. I will let you know. Like always, see you tomorrow.